Almost 3 years ago, Microsoft announced backwards compatibility for the Xbox One. Play your old Xbox games, your Xbox 360 games, on your current system. It's a nice idea, isn't it? That was kind of a big move for them. It was a big thing to focus on, and it was a real selling point for the Xbox One ever since, if you ask me.
Definitely.
It's a big kind of bet for them, according to GeekWire, and GeekWire says that it's paid off. This is a feature that GeekWire have run this week. This is the quote from the headline. 3 years later, Microsoft's bet on Xbox One backwards compatible games is paying off. Do we agree with that before we go into it on the surface of it? I do.
Yeah. Well, you got to look at why it's deemed as a bet, right? Because they're plowing all these resources in to enhance these games, and essentially they're not getting any money back for it. They're just like free updates to these games. So that's where the risk comes in, because if you're plowing resources in, you want to see some payback. You want to see that it's having some sort of effect, or it's adding value to your product, essentially. Yeah. Is it getting people talking, getting people saying nice things enough to get people excited about the Xbox and buying the Xbox One X for these enhancements? I think, personally, yes, and you agree, right?
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to get into today. It's a strategy from Microsoft that is more about getting people adopting the system and less about making money. I think it's more about getting people on board with the Xbox so that they can make money down the line, because that's what they need. And it's a big move, and it's a big part of the strategy now, so that's what we're going to talk about. GeekWire says in their article that they rightly point out, in my opinion, that Xbox One has, quotes, a strange lack of exclusives, which is dead right. I think strange. That it is weird. It is a weirdly shallow pool of exclusives that we've got. You have to agree with it. Last year in 2017, they got a console exclusive deal on PUBG, and that came out on the Xbox just as Fortnite Battle Royale was really kicking off, and the popularity of that game was really taking off, and that is free to play across all platforms. So certainly that it was a big acquisition for Xbox, no doubt, but the sting is taken out a little bit by the success of Fortnite. They also had Halo Wars 2 last year, which didn't review that well. It was kind of it's a 70 or something like that on PC on Metacritic, and it's about 79 on Xbox. And so it's okay. It wasn't kind of a huge deal for them. And then Forza Motorsport 7, which is reliably a strong reviewer, and that got like 86, 87 on Metacritic. So that was a good game for them. But again, that's kind of a racing niche type thing. Mm-hmm. And both those games, of course, were on PC. They also had the definitive edition of ReCore, which...
What even is ReCore?
They had Super Lucky's Tale, which arrived just in time to make no use whatsoever of Xbox One X's extra power. And they had Cuphead, right? So Cuphead's a big game. Yeah. But again, that is on the PC. And it doesn't feel like you need an Xbox to get it. And that's their problem, because they're saying they've got this Play Anywhere policy, which is great for us, because we have PCs and we can play these games on PC, but it means you don't need an Xbox One to play it. They also cancelled the Platinum game Scalebound, or Douchebags and Dragons, as I'm calling it. So that's it. That's their 2017. It was a bad year for them.
It was a bad year in terms of you compare it to Sony, because Sony did so many new things, so many great games came out last year. They're still doing it this year as well. But you got to think that this whole Xbox Microsoft focus right now is whatever's pro-consumer, right? Because they had that whole backlash during the beginning of this console generation over the always-on DRM shtick, and I think they're course-correcting, and that's what they're doing. Like everything that you see, they've got the Game Pass now, which is kind of consumer-friendly because you get AAA games day one, whatever AAA games they come up with, obviously. You've got the backwards compatibility, which is 100% free, and they're doing the consumer-friendly things to try and win back the positive feeling from the community. But is it enough to sell consoles? Is it enough to sell games? Is it enough to make profit?
Well, it is a good offering, right? And I think it's a smart move as well on many fronts, and this is why. So, what do you get actually? What is Xbox One backwards compatibility before we go any further? Well, since 2015, they've been adding to the Xbox One backwards compatible library to the point where there is now around 500 games. 500 360 and original Xbox games that you can play on your Xbox One, which is lovely. It's really good. It's much better than what you've got on the PlayStation, and we'll get to that in a sec. And that's a big deal. That's a huge library of games, and that's quite an easy thing for them to do. You can see them sitting there in the board meeting, realizing that, hang on a minute, we haven't got exclusives coming out. We haven't got that many studios working, but what we have got is access to hundreds and hundreds of games. Yeah. If we just got our engineers to work on the Xbox One, we could get those games to work on the Xbox One. And suddenly that's a massive library, and importantly, it is a PlayStation weakness. So it's something that you can't get on the PlayStation 1 without paying a flipping subscription for PlayStation Now, which, who wants to do that? That's not very consumer friendly at all, because a lot of people already own these games and so on. So it's a really smart move. They've targeted a potential strength. They've seen something that PlayStation isn't doing very well. It is doing exclusives really well, and they can't fight on that front. But they're choosing to open up another front, which is backwards compatibility. With One X as well, we definitely need to mention this. A few titles have actually been optimized by Microsoft to run in 4K. So they've kind of spoken to these companies. They've spoken to the likes of Rockstar to get Red Dead Redemption running in 4K. And then it's like the selection is limited there, but it does include Red Dead Redemption, which is one of the absolute standout games of the 21st century. So they're doing some smart things. So I want to get onto something you said in the office about this. You said you were genuinely toying with the idea of getting a One X because of Red Dead Redemption running in 4K, right? So can you kind of explain what the appeal is to you there?
Right, when I said toying with the idea, I might have thought of it for 30 seconds.
Well, the thought crossed your mind.
That's true.
Right.
But Red Dead Redemption, right, one of my favourite games ever. I mean, hands down. And to be able to play it in 4K, and having seen the Digital Foundry video, which I highly recommend you checking out if you haven't seen, and the comparison side by side with the 360, the Xbox One, and the Xbox One X version, it's night and day. It's absolutely phenomenal what they've done. I should note that they haven't included a texture pack, right? So there's no 4K textures. The textures are all the same. Foliage is the same. The draw distance is the same. However, it looks so much smoother and crisper because of like the anti-aliasing and just how it looks. The whole world looks so much more clearer. It's like putting some glasses on when you couldn't see before.
I mean, this is something that I find really interesting, is that in the videos that I've seen, I think it's Jeremy Penter from ACG who actually said that you look at some remasters and they don't look as remastered as Red Dead Redemption looks running on Xbox One X, which
like
is
Dark Souls, for example.
Well, I mean,
that doesn't look as good as this.
There are some examples of remasters that don't look as good, and because this is running 4K, it just the resolution count is so much higher. And even if you don't really care about graphics and stuff that much, and if you don't really think about it at all, if you were to play the old Red Dead Redemption on your 360, the original version, and play it, you'd see how blurry and kind of aliased it looks, and the draw distance, like you can't see very well in what's
it gets
going on in the
blurry
background.
really quickly.
You can't even make things out very well in the distance. Like, is that a person? Is it a cactus? But when it's running on an Xbox One X, it looks absolutely crisp as anything. It looks amazing.
It's an absolute feat for a game that ran originally in 720p to just to get it to be able to be playable in 4K. Absolutely free. If you've got the disc, you can stick it in your Xbox One X and play it. As long as you download the updates or whatever. It's a phenomenal offering from Xbox Microsoft. You cannot dispute that. This is exceptional.
Yeah, it is really great. And again, like I said, it's a smart move, because when you compare it to what you've got on the PlayStation, it blows Sony out of the water in this department, because You've got PlayStation Now, which is a subscription service which you stream, and the quality isn't that. It's not going to be like running off a disc in 4K. Let's put it that way. You've got PlayStation Classics, which you have to buy, and the catalogue there is very limited to PlayStation 2 games. There's like a couple of PlayStation 1 games, which I think is essentially just a few Final Fantasy games, and that's it, right? And that's it. Those are your options. You can't put your old PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2 discs into the PlayStation 4. And Xbox is just identified that as a real weakness. And people who don't have PCs, maybe there are old games in their catalogues, they've got loads of discs lying around the house. They want to play these old games. And they've only got like one system set up under their TV. This is the way to go. You've got to get an Xbox.
This is the reason that I needed to want to own an Xbox One X, to want to own an Xbox. Before I didn't have any reason, because the exclusives were all with Sony. There wasn't anything that drew me to it, anything at all, gameplay wise. This is the reason. Red Dead Redemption in 4K is the reason I want one now. And for them to have created that in me, obviously thousands upon millions maybe of gamers around the world feeling the same thing, that they might want to have this gaming experience which wasn't available. It isn't available anywhere else.
And in the case of Red Dead Redemption as well, it's not on PC, so you can only go for PlayStation 3 or Xbox 360 or now Xbox One, or in 4K on Xbox One X, which that means that you can play a game that it hasn't been remastered. It's just Microsoft's own, going off its own back to go into these games and kind of sort them out, obviously with communication with Rockstar and stuff, and them helping out as well. well, I guess, to try and get this thing looking at its absolute best. So now, Xbox One X is the best place to play Red Dead Redemption in the year that Red Dead Redemption 2 is coming out. So it's just a smart business move, and it hasn't been them opening up loads of studios and trying to compete with Sony on the exclusives front, which we should reiterate. Sony is absolutely battering Xbox when it comes to first-party new exclusives, but they're just not competing on that front now, and they're just doing something else, and it's great. It's a good move, I think. And obviously they've got the multi-platform games, and they've got all the Call of Duties and FIFA and Assassin's Creed and all the usual suspects. I just think it's really good. They're only building up the library as well. There's 8 backwards compatible games arriving this week, which include Morrowind, Conquer Live and Reloaded, Breakdown, and Jade Empire. That's a great selection of games and more. There's another batch arriving next week, which includes 6 Star Wars titles, which includes the best game ever, Knights of the Old Republic 2, the original actually good Star Wars Battlefront games, and Jedi Academy. All of these games, if you've got them lying around the house and you've got an Xbox One, you can play them. You can play them in that, and it's just a kind of a freedom, a liberty that you haven't got on the PlayStation. Yeah. And hats off to Microsoft for identifying it.
And just if we're just going to wrap this video up soon, but the last point that I want to make is, although PlayStation aren't currently doing this, the fact that Microsoft it's got PlayStation thinking, and it has to be consideration for PlayStation, just because Microsoft are offering that to stay competitive in this console war, if people term it. Then PlayStation if PlayStation bring backwards compatibility in the next generation, which is PlayStation 5, you have to thank Microsoft for that, for keeping it and making it competitive, and for offering it in the first place.
Creating the competition and pushing things in that direction. I think it's a real strength. It's a real selling point of the Xbox One now, to see them working on enhancing games for the Xbox One X. It wasn't just Red Dead Redemption. Just recently they added Portal 2, Gears of War 2, a few others. They're doing good work there, and they're still pushing it forward. So I think you're right. I think PlayStation does need to react. I don't think they will with the PS4. I think it will come in the PlayStation 5, but it has to happen there, I think. So there you go. Those are our thoughts on Xbox One's backwards compatibility. It may not be home to many new exclusives at the moment, actually, but it's certainly home to a shitload of old classic games, and you can play them there, some of them in 4K if you want, which is bloody lovely. Let us know what you think of Microsoft's backwards compatibility program in the comments. Are you a PlayStation owner? Would you like to see Sony following suit with something of their own like this? Let us know. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. There should be another video on your screens in a sec that you can watch, and a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. We'll see you next time.